Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening. I'm Isha Saluja, and I welcome you all to today's Satsang session with Sri Ashish. So, before we begin with the session, we'll first start with 15 minutes in silence, and then we'll have some insights from Sri Ashish himself.
Good morning, everybody, and good evening to Malini. So let's start with our 15-minute session. I think everybody on this call knows that just sit in silence and let the thoughts come and go, and don't engage. Don't try and analyze the thoughts or get entangled. Just watch them come and go. Okay, so here we go.
So we're through with 15 minutes.
Okay. Isha beta, I think we have a very small group today, right?
Yes.
So maybe worthwhile to just give access to the mics and the video as well
Sure.
for everybody. Okay. So how's everybody feeling?
Feeling all right.
Good. This morning, Srinivas, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Guruji.
Good. Okay. Good. Anil, Malini, how are things?
I'm doing fine too.
Okay. Wonderful. So today's
Yes, all
topic.
energetic, ready to go.
Okay. Super. So today's topic was selected by Isha, and Isha has selected the mother of all topics, which is the mind. So I think the way I want to approach this today is that we will together try and dissect this conundrum called the mind. We hear a lot about mental health nowadays, right? We hear about mental well-being. um, we hear about yoga practices called mindfulness. A lot of people say, look, my mind is not right. um, Seems to be this very entity seems to be the cause of worries, stress, anxieties, fear. But the key question which nobody does ask, there's a lot of research happening on this thing called the mind. So I think the first question is for us to ask in the dissection, anything that we want to dissect. And Nutan, you're a scientist, right? uh, Anything that we want to dissect, right, we need to first know what it is. Then only we can dissect this thing. So I think the first thing that we should do together today as an exercise is to figure out what is it that is called this mind, right? What are its qualities, its attributes? Does it have any properties? What are the physical or chemical properties of this mind that we all talk about? The first thing will be what is this mind? Once we've kind of constructed and created a base or a structure of what this mind is, then I think we should try and ask the second question is, where is this mind? If there is an entity called the mind and we've been able to give it some shape or form or some qualities to it, then where does this abide? Um, where is the abode of this mind? Is it within us? Is it outside us? Is it something that we can hold on to? Can we see it? So let's then try and dissect. The second question is, where is the abode? And then if we can figure out where this mind is, then of course the third question is, since we all have seemed to have taken ownership, or something appears to have taken ownership of this mind, because we say this is my mind, my mind is not doing this, my mind is not doing that, I'm using my mind to analyze something. Then if we have ownership of this mind, then why is it not in our control? Why is it every time we try and control this thing called the mind, it seems to be uncontrollable? We tend to go this way, this thing seems to take us this way. We try to use this thing to figure things out, but it gets distracted with other things. So, what is the reason? Why is it that we're not able to control it? Is it under our control? If yes, then why are we not able to control it? And if not, then who's controlling this entity? So, three things I think as an exercise, let's try and dissect what is the mind first. Let's try and give it some kind of shape if we can. Because if we can't define it, if we can't figure it out, then it just seems to be a concept, right? It seems to be something imaginary that seems to have appeared from somewhere. Then if there's something that has appeared from somewhere and it's imaginary, then anything that it's causing, wouldn't that also be imaginary? So let's first define that. And then, let's figure out where it belongs. Who does it, and then the third is who does it belong to? Yeah, does that make sense? Is this good?
Yep.
Okay. So, what do you think is the mind? If today you say it's my mind, what is the mind? Anybody? Srinivas, what do you think is the mind? Nutan, what do you think is the mind?
I think, yeah, I think the mind is a state of consciousness that controls everything. Like it controls your thoughts, sometimes it controls your actions, but it's a state of consciousness, I guess.
Okay. So can we say that it is a collection of thoughts, emotions? Is it just that? Just the collection of thoughts and emotions?
I think, yes, yeah, we can say that.
Okay. Srinivas, what do you think the mind is?
What was told, I concur with that. Mind drives the actions, I believe.
Okay. So there is this entity which is a collection of thoughts, emotions, and also something that drives our actions, right? Or drives
Yeah.
the action. Okay. Anil?
I think that's a good definition, decisions and actions.
Okay. Decisions and actions. Okay. Malini?
I don't know what the mind is, but I know it causes a lot of disturbances in our lives.
Yes, correct. It seems to be the cause of all sufferings, right? It seems to be the cause of all problems. Okay. So the best definition, I think, so far we've come up with is that it's a collection of thoughts, it's a collection of emotions, and it is also something that controls our actions and our decision making. It is the power that actually controls this, right? Okay. So if we can now provide that bit, so does it have any properties? Does it have any physical or chemical properties? Or is it just out there? What do you guys think? Can we put it in a box? Or is it just hanging out there?
I believe, not believe, it looks like we can put it in a box because whatever information that went into the brain, that's creating the mind. Um, See, I was born into a family from which I received the information, and also the external world that is there near me sent some information into brain, which is causing my thoughts.
So do we agree that the brain, so as far as science tells us and the anatomy of our body tells us that the brain is only there to interpret signals in relation to something. So we can cut the brain, but is the brain housing the mind?
Mm, It looks like if we treat the brain like a hardware where information gets stored, some information is there which is creating my thoughts and my actions. If I had been in a different context, had been born in Guruji's house, how I think would have been different, because the information that would have gone into my brain would be different. I don't know the brain or mind, the words, if I'm correctly
So then,
using.
Srinivas, would that just be because the brain is just the storing, right? It's just keeping memory. So
Right.
then would we also say that the mind is something that also consists of our memories?
Yes. Looks like for me, I'm saying.
Okay. So now we've defined the mind as something that has memories. It's a collection of memories, thoughts, emotions, driver of actions, and it also ascertains decision making, which means that it also constitutes the intellect.
See, if you look at, truly physiologically through the anatomy, the cognitive centers and the memory centers actually are at a physical location in a brain. And mind is quite different than that. Mind has no physiological basis. Thoughts have physiological basis, anatomical basis. But memory actually resides in a specific location in the physical organ brain. So mind is a collection of thoughts. That is actually true, and it does decision making and it drives our actions. But I do not see it has, you can correlate that with the anatomical brain per se. Overall, if there is no brain, there's no thoughts, there's no decision, there's no action. But you cannot say that mind is at this particular location on the brain. But you can say that if your decision making power is in the frontal brain, right? Those are the cognitive centers. If you remove them, you will not have those abilities. So mind is a collection of thoughts, a superset of what the brain does, but nothing to do directly with any part of the brain.
So good. So does it precede the body, or does it does it come after the body?
After, it's a super. I think it's the word mind is what you feel and what you think. I would say that for mind to exist, the brain has to exist.
Okay.
But it is not part of the brain, if that
So
makes sense.
Anil, what I
So,
feel is,
hold on. One sec,
yeah,
Srinivas. So
sure.
in that case, Anil, when you're in deep sleep, is the brain dead?
No,
But you have no awareness of the body, right?
correct.
So wouldn't the mind precede the body? Because only when
That's not
mind
mind.
becomes active.
I will not say. I mean, I think it's at that point in time, the brain's activities actually goes down precipitously. All these neurons that are there not firing, or not connecting as much as you were doing some activity, which is actually pretty clear if you actually, look at these MRIs and all those things, right? But mind, so the brain is not dead for sure, right? Because as soon as we wake up, we know that we slept. So that consciousness is there. The consciousness, you're aware that you are alive when you're sleeping. So that is always there. But the mind, meaning the thoughts, could be there, could not be there, I do not know. But you are not able to, in deep sleep, in kind of regular sleep, REM sleep, you can remember your dreams also. But in deep sleep, you do not remember anything. But you are still aware that you're sleeping.
But are you aware at the time when you're deep sleep, or you are aware only when you wake up?
Only when you wake up.
Right. So in deep sleep, something has disappeared, which even takes away your awareness that you're alive. Only because somebody else tells you that you were alive during your deep sleep, you know that you are alive. Only when you come back out of deep sleep that you realize that your body is still there and the world comes back into play. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is my
Correct.
understanding and assessment correct? Is that what everybody has experienced on this call? That when you go in deep sleep, you're not aware of anything, neither your body nor your brain, nor your breath, nothing, right? Is that what everybody's experience has been? Or somebody's had a different experience?
That's how it is.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
So can we then say that the mind actually precedes the body? Because when the mind becomes active, which is our collection of thoughts, our memories, our emotions and feelings, the awareness that we exist, the awareness that is within the body, that the body is there, can we then say that this thing is preceding the body? If the mind becomes quiet, if there are no thoughts, if there is no emotions, if there are no feelings, no awareness, then there is no awareness of anything else. Is that a correct assumption?
Do you want to make a distinction between consciousness and mind, or you are considering both as same?
No, I'm not. I'm just talking about the mind, consciousness, because then then we'll find where the mind is abode, right? Mind is then, if it's before the body, that means the mind is not aboding, which is our next question. Where is the mind? If we all agree that the mind comes before the body, that means the mind is not housed in the body. So then the question arises, where is this mind housed in? Then we have to go back. That means maybe the mind is then, as Newton said, is consciousness, is a state of consciousness. That means then the mind is probably abiding within consciousness.
But mind is alive only when you're awake. When you're sleeping, there's no mind. Because that's a state of total bliss. Deep sleep is a state of total bliss. So mind is only, you are aware of your mind only when you're awake.
No, so are you aware of your mind, or you're aware of your body when the mind is awake? Is it you're aware of, are you aware of your mind when the body is there, or are you aware of your body when the mind is there?
No,
That's interesting.
no. You're aware of the mind only when you're awake. That means your body is there. Otherwise, you're not aware of your mind. Because
And
when
you
you're
will
in
be
deep
aware
sleep,
of your body when your mind is there. If your mind is not there, you will not be aware of your body. If you remove the brain, you will not be aware of your body.
When body reaches a certain state, then only mind emerges. So mind is kind of emerging from body state where it is, kind of thing. So if we are in deep sleep, body is at a different state than when we are awake. So mind is coming kind of when body is interacting with the external world at a certain level, then mind is emerging.
So does that mean then the mind comes after the body?
looks like
Mind,
it.
yeah.
Are you
Mind
sure?
is,
Because you just said in deep sleep, when the mind is quiet, you're not aware of the body.
Correct.
So if the mind is not awake or the mind has not come back, then you're not aware of the body.
But where is the mind? Mind is not in the body.
Good, good.
Where is
Yeah.
the mind?
Okay.
Because when
So
you're
if
sleeping, your body is still there, right? When you're in deep sleep, your body is still there, but the mind is missing.
yes, but you're
it's
not
not
aware of it.
missing. It's not. It is not missing. It is at a sleep state, I should say. Mind. Mind has levels of awareness in which the waves are at a state where mind is dormant. Mind awakens when the body receives sensory inputs, like if someone makes a lot of the noise or a lot of light falls on the eyes, then it interacts with the brain and brings it to a state where mind emerges.
So again, we need consensus on this call. Is the mind before the body or is the mind after the body? Because if the mind is before the body, then the mind is not housed in the body. If the mind is after the body, the mind is housed in the body. And
Even
then,
when you're sleeping and
yeah,
you want to take a turn, right? You may be sleeping on your left side and you want to take a turn and go to your right side, right? That's when even when you take the turn, you're awake for a minute because, something tells you that you need to take a turn, right? You're not doing it subconsciously. At least for me. I don't
right.
know about the others,
But
but
when
for
you're in
me,
deep sleep, like deep sleep, right? You don't, there's no awareness of the, you don't take a turn, nothing, right? It's only that when you've come out of it, then you're aware of your body, and then you say, okay, wait a minute, I need to take a turn because something has gone, you know, something has,
I'll
something's
make
gone to
my
sleep.
final statement, Guruji, on this. I won't disturb after this. See, if we have parts that we bring and make a wheel, before we make the wheel, there are parts. When we make a wheel from the parts, ability to rotate is emerging from it. The wheel, when we lay it down on the floor, it's not rotating, but rotating ability is in there in the wheel. And when the wheel gets onto the road, it rotates. So is rotating ability is there in the wheel when it is laying down on the floor. If you ask, has it gone, means it's not gone, but it is not rotating because it's not in the place where it needs to rotate. So rotating ability, if we treat it like mind, is it there, means it is there in the wheel even when it is laying down on the floor. But when we bring it to the state, it can rotate. The same
Right.
way body, mind is there with the body, but when the body gets to certain state and place, mind is emerging, means that rotating ability gets expressed and shown, so we can see that, oh, it is rotating. The same way mind comes when body reaches a place where it can express the mind.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that the mind is, in your example, is a collection of all these parts, right? Which is like in your thing, you're saying, look, the wheel only comes together when you collect all these parts. So in this case, we've said all the parts are what? Our memories, our thoughts, our decision, our awareness. But none of these are any physical attributes. All you said are all conceptual attributes. Awareness is part of, it's consciousness. Awareness is, thoughts are part of, there's no physical attribute to a thought. There is no physical attribute to a memory. So all of these put together, the intellect is there, but it's again, it's not something that we can touch or feel. So all of this, you're saying, is collected, and we're calling it something called an entity called the mind. So we've now defined as a question one, what is the mind? We've said that the mind is a collection of all these things. And when we put all these things together, the whole is called the mind. Okay, agreed. All right. Now the second question comes is, where does this mind reside? If this mind resides within the body, right? Because what we know, that matter by its very existence is inert. So now the question is, if it is residing in the body, right, then we should be aware of it all the time. But in deep sleep, we are not aware of it. So does the mind, does the collection of memory, thoughts, awareness, all of that give life when it is projected outward? Does it give life to a body, to a form and a name and a shape? Or other way around, that the body came first and then came the mind? Because if it is housed within the body, then like you can control your hand, you can control your legs, you can control. The third question then we'll have to see is, why does it seem to be out of control? And where does it go away in deep sleep? Why does then the awareness go away in deep sleep? Then we should be able, if we can control it's part of our body, then shouldn't be able to control it, right? So this is something that where the understanding needs to come to. Now, when we look at our Shastras and when we look at some people who have done research in it, the masters, so Ramanna defined the mind as something, was a wondrous power that had arisen within consciousness and was the cause of all creation. That's what he defined it as. He said, this is that power of consciousness that is the cause of all existence. And that's why we had the three vadas that he had talked about. He had talked about the non-causality doctrine, Ajata Vada, the Drishti Shishti Vada, and the Shishti Drishti Vada, right? Which was, the first one was that there has been no cause, so that even the cause, which is the mind, the power, is also imaginary. It's also just an illusion within the pure consciousness. So something, so in order for a dream to happen, you need a dreamer. Without a dreamer, in order to see something, you need the seen and the seer. Because if one or the other is not there, then both don't exist. They only exist in codependency. So the mind was that great cause or the big dreamer which is dreaming up all of this stuff. So that dreamer itself is a dream, is imaginary. So that's how he defined it. The other Paramahans Yogananda in his rendition defined it as we defined it now. It's nothing but a collection of all of these things. It's a collection of memories, thoughts, ideas, um, awareness. So all of this, or active awareness, right? There is awareness where it's inactive, which we call, it's called as Brahman. But then there is active awareness. When there is active awareness, there is some cause, then it's pushed out and you see creation. So they call this that, right? In some parts, it says from reality comes consciousness, from consciousness comes ego, from ego comes mind, from mind comes body, from body comes world. When there is a reversal of this, you basically, when all of this is, you reverse it through, you come to the base of existence. So it's very critical, important to discern and have an understanding that the mind, is it coming before or after? Because when you tend to try and seek or find an answer of where this thing resides, we can't seem to find it. If we cut open our brain, we can point, as Anil said, we can point specific, things within the brain that have control or control memory or certain things. But we can't find this thing called the mind. When we independently look at our thoughts and we say, look, the mind is part of our brain or part of our body, but we don't seem to be able to control any of our thoughts. We're not able to control our emotions. We're not able to control what we are aware of. Anything that is part of that subset or the parts of that set called mind, we don't seem to have any control over it. So it seems to be that this thing seems to be preceding body, because body seems to just be the field of the mind. It's like you're playing soccer. The body seems to be that platform or the field on which the mind seems to be playing, all its game, right? So again, be very clear, because if we have a misunderstanding of where the mind is, and if we have this connectivity that the mind is part of the body, then the struggles will continue to happen. So it is very important to understand and to really understand where the structure, where the mind actually sits in this whole imaginary, illusionary construction. So again, do we still believe that the mind is part of the body? Or do we believe that the mind precedes the body? And because of all of these thoughts, memories, and collections, it projects out and plays its game in something called the body. It gives these thoughts, these memories, this awareness, uh, the ability to act, the ability to decide, to decipher. All of this is just being played out. All of this collection has been given a shape and a form called the body. Or does the body come first and then it gives shape to the mind?
So I think, two things we all can agree upon. I think one is during deep sleep, there is no body, there is no mind. We're not making any distinction between the two. During deep sleep, that's a fact. There's no body because you're not aware of it, any of these two entities. That's one. Second is there is a difference between consciousness and mind. They're not the same. And if you really look at the non-dualism, the only thing that exists is consciousness. Only thing that exists is consciousness. Mind exists, and I say, I'm based upon the understanding that there will be no mind if there is no brain. If there's a brain, and if we consider brain as part of our body, then brain comes first, minds comes second. Because if you remove the brain, you don't have mind. You still will have, according to this non-dualism, you still have the consciousness, which is a kind of a reality that is giving rise to, as we all say, I think you say always, everything appears in that consciousness. The consciousness is a constant. It always there. Mind appears in it, body appears in it, world appears in it. But if you look at the body and mind, then I would say we know if there is no brain, there is no mind. And mind is a collection of what you all decided, right? It's an intellect, it's a decision making, it's all these thoughts. Should I go here? Should I go there? That's all there in the mind, but you cannot locate it in the brain physically. You can locate certain things. If you have a stroke, a basic part, if some part of the brain is actually damaged, that associated body part gets affected. We know those things. So there are some anatomical locations in the brain that has certain functions in the body. But for mind, you cannot say that it is here or it is there. It is kind of it's like a um, overall functioning of the brain that has certain functions like memory, intellect, decision making, action of the body, all of those things.
So then are you saying that by manipulating the brain, you can manipulate the mind?
No, that will not happen. But if you remove certain part of the brain, certain capabilities of the mind will not be there.
No, but if you're saying that the mind is where the brain is where the mind is housed, right? That means all the functionalities of the mind are being controlled by the brain.
Not all. No. See, I'm not connecting the two because there's no physical connection. That's where the missing link is. There's no physical connection. Overall, what we are calling mind, right? People lose memories in Alzheimer's, right? Because certain parts of the brain or certain chemical changes happen in the brain and people cannot remember. So if you think a part of, and they can still function, they can walk, they can talk, they just don't remember. So certain functions of the mind gets eliminated or distorted if some physical problems happens in the brain. You can say that part, but I'm saying that mind is overall a filtered up view, which is not brain. That's how I'm thinking about it.
But so is it housed in it or it's not housed in it?
It's not housed in it.
It's not housed.
It's not housed in it. It's not housed in it, but it is a basis for it. In this, it is not housed in it, but it is a basis for it. If you remove the brain, there is no mind.
So is the brain a tool for the mind, or is the mind a tool for the brain?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can it both ways. I mean, you can actually change your mind and actually, you can make the body go somewhere. So that means the mind is controlling the body. But on the other hand, if you cut a piece of a brain from some particular location, certain functions of the mind will go away.
So do certain functions of the mind go away, or do certain functions of the body go away?
of the mind. I mean, if we think that memory is part of the mind, then yes, if I actually take out certain parts of the brain, I will not have the memory. I will not be able to remember.
So then
Like
is
it happens in Alzheimer's, right? You know, we
right?
have examples of that.
So brain could just be like a hardware,
Yes, correct,
right? And the software
correct,
could be the mind.
correct. I think the example that Srinivas gave actually is a good one. See, you have all the parts there. That means you have pre-existing portions of it. These are like, parts of the wheel. Some may be lying flat, some may be like, a triangular, some may be like, something else. When you put it together, right, now you have created a new functionality out of those parts. So hardware was those parts, and then when you put it into certain form, it achieves a new functionality which was not there before, and then the mind actually comes. I think that
Right.
was a
So
good
so
example.
in that case, the wheel is just been given a name and shape. So all the parts of the body have been put together, and then something is driving the body, and then we've just given it a name and shape, right? Which is what we call the wheel.
Correct,
If we start removing individual parts of the wheel, then they're just individual parts,
correct,
right?
correct. Yes,
Like if we say, look at Mumbai, Mumbai is nothing but earth. But because we've given it a name and form, now we all call it Mumbai. So, same way, if we remove all the parts, then really something called the mind may not be there, right? We've just given it a name and a shape. Yes, no? What do you think, Srinivas?
Mm, I feel that maybe the words that we are using for consciousness and mind, each of us has a different line between them. But this emergence property means when parts are put together, a new thing coming out of it is what we are talking here about mind and body is how I see. But in this conversation, I felt I thought one more thing. If we were oculus, then we are fooled, and our mind and body connection somehow we can manipulate, I believe. So is mind taking over the body that time? I do not know. I mean, this wheel thing bit confusing me. Just now I thought.
Correct. Yes.
So if we wear oculus,
So,
we are
so imagine
manipulating
it's
some.
taken us, we have spent 45 minutes in trying to just define the mind, and we don't have consensus yet, right? So we are, and we put so much effort in this thing called the mind, that we are going through all the suffering. My mind is this, my mind is that. But when we've all together sat down, we're not able to figure this thing out. So an entity which the whole world is worried about is trying to do so much research, is trying to figure out what this is, right? Like is we keep talking about it. It comes up in every conversation that we have. Probably comes to you, during your day. But we still, when we sit down and we think about it, and we sit down and debate about it, we can't put a construct, a simple construct. We can't say like, here is a remote, and what does the remote have? We've got these parts, and we put this together, we create a remote. It's as easy as that. But we are not able to come and give a construct to the mind. There are different opinions, there are different things, there are different confusing ideas. So if we are not able to provide a construct to something like this, then how do we give it so much weightage? Why do we give it so much weightage? Why do we worry about it so much? And do we worry about it, or does it make us worry about it? Right. So the reason, and this, we will continue this conversation, because this is a topic, as I said, is the mother of all topics. Because if you guys can figure this out and have a very clear understanding of, within this whole illusionary superstructure that is being created, or that appears to be created, where this thing actually sits, and whether it actually sits or not, whether it actually is there or not, then by figuring this out, you can then figure out everything. All superstructures then kind of dissipate, because you're correct. When there is no mind, then there is nothing. There is peace. The disturbance in this so-called mind that we are all trying to figure out is the cause of all this nonsense. So if you can, have this understanding of where this lies and how this lies and how this has been constructed, means we've not yet even gone to the second one or the third question. So what is it? We have to define that. Where does it reside? Which we still not have a consensus whether it's part of the body, it's outside the body, it comes before the body, it comes after the body, it may be in the body, outside the body, it may be before and after, right? It's partially before, partially after. So we have to first figure that out. And then the third is that once we figure this out, that this is what it is, this is where it resides, then who controls it? Is it controlling us? Are we does it control the body and everything, or do we control it? Because if it is the one that is controlling everything, then we will go back into the discussion of free will against, destiny or script. And if we are controlling it, then why all the suffering? Right? So this is not easy. This takes time. And Isha has dropped a nuclear bomb on all of us by saying, sir, we want to discuss, the mind and the nature of the mind. And what is this mind about? Because, a lot of people have overactive minds, right? We say, you know, why am I doing this? Why am I overthinking? Because, why are there so many things, right? Why am I distracted? Because you have an overactive mind. But you say that you have an overactive mind, but nobody knows what this is about. What is this mind?
So one thing I would say, Isha, that there are full semester courses on mind. Only yesterday I was listening to, maybe at the end of this, I will send you a link, and then you will get some idea from that. There are whole courses. People do PhDs. Researchers have, and there's a person called David Chalmers. He's trying to solve the problem. He calls it hard problem of consciousness. It's just people have been researching it for years, hundreds of years, right? But they can define, or at least they have some thoughts about the mind and body. But consciousness, as I said, should be distinct from mind, which is very hard to kind of define or measure, or in the scientific manner. But we all have that awareness. We know that we are conscious. And when we say we control our mind or we cannot control our mind, that means you are not the mind. You cannot be, because if you say that I can see a table, that means you and table are different, right? You cannot be the table. There's a knower and there's an object. So similarly, if I can say I can control my thoughts or I'm not able to control my thoughts, that means you and your thoughts are different. So what I'm trying to say is this: the consciousness is us. That's who you, when you say I can control my mind, that means you is different than the mind and different than the thoughts. And people who actually following certain paths, they can control their thoughts or they can minimize their thoughts. And some are completely able to eliminate thoughts. The consciousness still remains. Consciousness is the only subject. Everything else is object that appears in that subject, in that consciousness. But if you really want to understand what mind is and how it is different than brain, there are tons of literature. You can actually go through and see what people are talking about. But it is not, as Sri Ashish was saying, it's not easy to grasp it because there is no clear black and white answers to these questions. But there's quite a bit of discussion around this topic. It's a very deep topic in the scientific circles as well as in the spiritual circles.
Anil, I feel from Guruji's discourse, not from his presence. See, whatever we are talking, I talked about the mind. I think in deep state, Guruji is able to achieve the state of awareness which I don't have. With his practice, in deep sleep also he is aware of himself. Whereas mine is, how to say, from knowledge I gained and experience. Again, these thoughts and what went into my brain and the mind that I have is making me talk whatever I spoke before. But walking the path, knowing the path, walking the path, in that it is more, mine is more of knowing the path. Most of the people's, I think Guruji walked the path and he knows what it means. Means again, when someone describes mango, me again repeating the same to a bigger audience or a different audience is what I am doing. I do not know really the sweetness of the mango, whereas Guruji knows what it means because he tasted it. I think most of the people end there because knowing is most can achieve, but walking is where we are trying to learn and try to walk ourselves on the path Guruji is suggesting. Yeah, that's all from
So
me.
I want to give homework. Now we've discussed this. So I want you guys to now go home and practice and tell me next time when we meet is to, were you able to find the abode of the mind? So this is where the practice of who am I comes. This is where Ramanna was really good at. Because what he said is that when we deep dive into the question of the mind and we begin to question, and the reason why it becomes difficult, as Anil said, Isha, that to comprehend what this thing is, because you are using the same tools to try and figure out whether there is any existence to the tool. And it kind of becomes a circular argument. You're trying, you've given the dress to the thief. You said you are now the policeman, and now go find and chase the thief or arrest the thief. So the thief, who is now wearing the clothes of the policeman, is trying to arrest himself, and it's not going to happen. So What Ramana was trying to now teach here was to question once you've been able to define, and as we can see today's call, we were, different people had different opinions of what the construct of the mind is. But then to question the very existence of the mind is what is walking the path is, as Srinivas says. So as you begin to question the mind and whether it exists and the ownership of that, which is the I consciousness that we start talking about, that one, if it abides within us, the ownership has been taken by somebody else. This I is taken, which is why you say this is my mind. Whether it is housed in the body or outside, you still call it my mind, which means that something has taken ownership of this entity. So first, whether this entity has any existence, and two, the ownership of that entity also has no existence. So if you feel this thing and keep questioning yourself, as I was explaining to you the other day, that the only thing it can do, the only thing that these tools that have been provided can do are only question their own boundaries. They cannot look beyond the boundary because they have been provided with limitations. They've been provided with these perceived or imaginary boundaries, which they believe that they have to operate within. And as they start to question those boundaries, they can't find those boundaries. One, they can't find its own boundary. It can't find its own structure and existence. It keeps bouncing from one thing or the other. It can't find the owner that says that this is my mind, this is my body. So as it begins to go within to start poking into the boundaries as to, hey, I've been given this box, I've been told to operate within this box, but where is the outer limit of the box? So as it begins to push out, it begins to understand that, look, perceived imaginary boundary that was provided is not there. So let me go further. Let me go further. Let me go further. And as it is asking, keeps continuously asking this question and going within, it seems to start understanding that my boundaries were not this limited. They're actually beyond, 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 beyond. And that is what is called the expansion of consciousness. That the original consciousness, which has started to believe that it was actually within this limited perceived boundary, is not there. So as it is now pushing itself out, it starts to understand that it is all part of the one consciousness. At some point, there won't be any limitations or boundaries left. When there are no boundaries or limitations left, when there is no construct or the perception of a construct there, when there are no more concepts or the perception of concepts there, that is when what is called nirvana or enlightenment or self-realization. So this is nothing but a journey of the very tool that we all believe is creating havoc. That same tool, which is why we say that if you can control it, right now, this guest that has come to your house has suddenly become the owner, and you started to behave like the guest. So as you begin to believe that you are the owner, or somebody comes and makes you start believing, which is where the guru's part comes in, and starts to say, look, wait a minute, why have you given up your house? You're the owner. But when I come into your house, I see that you're actually acting as the guest. So let me remind you that you are actually the owner. So this is where the guru's part comes in. But as you begin to believe and take over your house back again, as you begin to control and begin to start questioning your limitations, you begin to start taking control once again. So this is, yes, not easy to understand, but this is where the practice of who am I comes in. This is what Ramana meant when to question the questioner, is to start questioning the very existence of itself, because that's the only thing it can do. It cannot comprehend Brahman. It cannot comprehend something which is beyond its limitations. The whole idea that somebody tells you that you can actually define and comprehend something which is beyond the limitations of the tools provided to you. If you're given a vernier caliper, the vernier caliper has a limitation. It can only measure so much. How can you ask it or use it to measure something beyond it? Cannot. It's not possible. So this is how this practice needs to be done. And this is something that probably we will talk next again, because this is a very interesting topic. And this is it. This is the topic. If you can figure this out and walk this path and practice this thing, to start questioning and stop believing in your limitations and start questioning your limitations and your boundaries. These are all perceived, these are all imaginary. So if these boundaries are imaginary and you're unlimited and you can control everything within the limitation as well, because you're the unlimited. Now, if you look at it from outside, then there's nothing there. You can control all your suffering and your emotions and everything. Everything can be controlled. Whether you choose it to control it at that point or not, because it becomes irrelevant. Once you realize that everything is you, because you're unlimited and everything is within you and housed within you, then whether you choose after that to participate or not participate is up to you. And how you participate and not participate is also up to you. Now you have full control. You have basically given control of an imaginary entity of your house. And now you're struggling with whatever that entity is doing within your house. You're not happy with it. Till you don't take control of your house, how will you be happy? That is the cause of all the suffering. That is what is causing all the angst within. Nobody else is to blame for anybody's issues. It's just a wrong perception of what actually is and what is not. When the understanding happens, it becomes very simple. Then it's easy. Truth, reality is the most simplest thing out there. It's because it's been complicated by a very wrong understanding, it's become complicated. Okay, so should we end it at that? That make sense or no? Or was it a bit too abstract?
It was a great base to begin with the further sessions, set of further sessions.
Yeah, food for thought.
Good for them. Good. Anil, good.
Yeah, very good. And I think, Srinivas, I agree that I think, knowledge is relatively easy. Walking on this path is the hardest. But at least, you start with the knowledge. And then I think with practice, maybe you can walk also. That's for sure.
Only way, Anil. No other way
Yeah.
to experience it. No other way
Yeah.
to be it. Because understanding, again, you're using that same tool to understand, to eliminate that tool. So if you just keep understanding, it'll keep you in that, it'll keep rotating you. Till you don't take the knowledge and begin the path and start destroying these perceived ideas and perceived boundaries and perceived bondages, notions, dogmas, memories, attachments, desires. All of this construed can be called the mind. All of this. So there's a very interesting, if you guys get a chance, you should read. I think Anil, you have it in the list. It's part of my list of books. But I think Srinivas, Malini, you also, I think, have the list, but it's called Tilopa. So there was this Buddhist sage or enlightened Buddha called Tilopa in the 900 ADs. who basically used mind as the main. He didn't talk about God or energy or anything. They took that whole collective consciousness as the mind. And his practice of Mahamudra, as he called it, was the nature, to understand the nature of the mind. And basically said that, look, when the mind is completely at equilibrium and there is no activity in the mind, there is no stirring, then that is your pure original base. When there is activity or stirring, or the mind gets a little disturbed, so it starts creating. So his practice was very simple. He said, there were 6 points in his practice, and he said always, anytime the top 5 happens, you should kind of come back to the 6th point, which was let go of what has passed. So let go of the past, let go of what is to come, let go of the future, let go of what is happening now, let go of the present. Don't try to figure anything out, because there's nothing to figure out. Don't try to make anything happen. There's nothing to make any happen. Just rest naturally. So if you keep coming down to that practice, which is what from Ramanna's side, he used the practice of who am I by questioning. If you keep practicing from Tilopa's side, you will find that both of these merge at the same point. When you deep dive into both of these practices, you realize that these are actually, they coincide with each other. They actually align with each other. So he talked about, and it's a very interesting book. If you guys should order it. Isha, you can actually distribute that list of books. It's one of the books there. It's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful book to read. And it really, that's its entire practice as a section of Buddhism called Vajrayana Buddhism, called Mahamudra, and its nature of the mind. So good. Okay, I guess we are at 11:40. So food for thought, food for next segue of next topic to discuss.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks,
Okay,
Guru.
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.